Prayer, then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I apologize that I'm doing this from home this evening, so I don't have a flag. So Sandy, you're on. And we don't hear you yet, Sandy. So
can you hear me now?
We can. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our precious Lord Jesus, we thank you for who you are. We thank you for a beautiful day, and we thank you for this beautiful city that you have allowed us as elected representatives to serve and represent the people of Nampa. Lord, we do not take this privilege lightly. We carry it heavily because we want to make the best decisions that, one, glorify you, that also protect our people, that give them the opportunity to prosper, to enjoy life, the uniqueness and quality of life that we enjoy. I do pray that you'd be with each one of us this evening. You'd give us a special, gracious discernment, that we would be wise, that we would listen, and that we would hear and realize what is best for our city and best for our citizens. Help us to put personal differences and biases aside and to hear what you would have us to hear and to do and make the decisions that would be honoring to you. We pray for our country as we're undergoing some really great crisis right now. We pray that you would help us to have patience, endurance, and that we would really work together to see our country be great and to be what we have been in the past. Pray for Councilman Rodriguez, and I pray for continued healing on him and his wife. Thank you that you have given us the opportunity to lift them up in prayer and to encourage them. Thank you for our mayor. Thank you for the council members. Thank you for the unique qualities that each one of us bring. May we appreciate those, and we ask these things in your son's precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So I'm going to stand, even though it's kind of awkward to stand, but let's stand, and Sandy, feel free to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sandy, thank you so much. I appreciate you opening us in prayer. That was wonderful. And it's a good day to pray because today is the National Day of Prayer. And I know a lot of different communities and different locations, we've had great times of prayer. So it's wonderful to remember that. So Deborah Rosen, I'll let you do roll call.
Bruner,
Here.
Mucci,
Here.
Levi,
Present?
Haverfield,
Here.
Bauer.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure Jacob will join us shortly. So I do not believe, I am not aware of any proposed amendments to the agenda. We do have a consent agenda there, which are just alcohol renewals that have come through that are typically on our consent agenda. And then the approval of the agenda. Is council aware of any amendments? And if not, I would stand for a motion to approve the consent agenda as proposed.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Bauer, Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Perfect. So this evening, we will be going through the new business items that we did not finish on Monday night and an unfinished business item. And then we have, at the end, we have a couple of executive session items. The first item on the agenda tonight, and before I start, I forgot to say this. I want to thank our staff. I appreciate the council and we did the marathon meeting on Monday, but I haven't thanked our staff because the staff, many staff are there for the whole meeting waiting for the opportunity in case there's a question on their agenda item. And I appreciated the staff being present, and I know it was a late night and then we didn't get to the agenda items, and here we go again. So I thank you to both staff and to the council for their willingness to work through, needless to say, the work that we have to do. So that said, let's begin with item 2.1 on the agenda. This is an action item, and this is to authorize the purchase of emergency fuel tanks. So Finance Director Doug Racine, I believe, is going to present this item. I think that we had talked about it previously, and then we were bringing it back for a discussion regarding funding sources. So Doug, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. I'm going to bring up on screen the summary of the project so you can all see it. I believe it was included with the original package, or as an amendment to the original package, but I want to be able to bring this up now. So just a comment to begin with. This was a very collaborative effort between finance, public works, and building and facilities. It's kind of a pattern we all want to see going forward, where finance supports the gathering and the analyses of the numbers using the expertise of the subject matter experts with facilities and public works to provide the context. But in working with both Tom Points and Patrick Sullivan, we were able to gather the information and put it together in a very cohesive format that is being shown to you right now. So first one question, is this document being seen by all those who are looking? Right. All right.
Yes.
So we all know that the rationale for this is being spurred by partly by the emergency situation we find ourselves in now with COVID virus, but also we've had a couple of recent earthquakes which have kind of surprised us all, and there's even been a one or two down in Salt Lake. So the emergency preparedness nature of this is driving us to bring this proposal forward. And let me give you the scope. This is to propose to place two 5,000-gallon above ground fuel tanks, one diesel and one regular gasoline.
Amen.
Pardon? Okay. Into the city's properties, so that in case of emergency, we can continue to operate our various generators and to provide a limited amount of fuel for operations of city vehicles. The scope includes the asphalt, the demolition, the safety portion, new structure, and as you can see, the trenching, core drilling, pump disconnects, and emergency shunt switch, so that just in case something happens to the above ground, we can shut it off. And also an emergency generator power connection, as well as a site fixture and lighting, which are not on place right now, so that not only is it lit up and visible, but if there is a power shortage, we have an emergency generator that can be connected to turn on the ability, or make the ability to pump the fuel possible for us. The costs are as follows. The two 5,000-gallon tanks with a total of $116,000. The construction is $36,960, and ancillary bond and contingency costs bring that total construction potential to $43,502. Below are the engineering and the security camera and signage will bring the total cost to the project, in this opinion, of $173,000. I just got a notice on my system that I have poor internet quality. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, I wanted to make sure my message was not coming across as garbled. One of the real challenges in putting this together was not just accumulating the cost, but determining how do we fund that without increasing our budget and without driving additional costs into the system. So Ed, myself, Tom, and Patrick put a fair amount of effort into finding out what was the best way to provide the funds for this within our current budgeted structure. So we came up with two primary methods. Within General Gov, and I think we heard about part of this last Monday night, we have $70,000 of savings from current projects that we could use to help fund a significant portion of this. Part of that was the IT. You recall Butch talking about the extensive work he went through to identify the best IT storage process and cost for going forward, and his savings of $50,000 comprises the bulk of this. So this is not an increased spend. It's leveraging savings we have found elsewhere, and the additional $20,000 is coming from savings of projects within building and facilities. And then we looked at the who's actually going to be using this. So there are a number of generators in public works, water, wastewater, and streets. We used the count of generators, the numbers, to create the cost allocation for the remainder of the $173,000 to allocate $103,000 to water, wastewater, and streets. If we have an emergency and we need to fuel the generators, this will be those will be the beneficiaries. Each of these departments have pretty substantial fund balances and a very large scope of projects ongoing currently. We will, with Tom's guidance and direction, reallocate a portion of the funds budgeted this year within the public work funds to provide the funds listed in order to complete the funding for the emergency fuel project. This seemed to be the most effective way to create the funds within the current structure. And that does include, all of the funding does include the one-time fill of gas for it, so that we have something to start with. With that, that's the essential presentation. I'll open it up for any questions that the council or the mayor might have.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Doug, is this a project that the city can act as their own general contractor on?
Pardon, no, it came across blurred on your comments.
I'm sorry. Is this a project that the city can be their own general contractor? Or do you have to bid this out?
Well, I believe the city can be. I'll let Patrick comment, but I believe the city is the general contractor. We can do the permit fees and not charge ourselves. And what we've done is bid out the construction to a firm to do the actual site preparation, which is a little more particular than a typical site preparation.
So the city can purchase the fuel tanks direct, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the scope of the construction cost needing a bid bond or a performance bond, why is that?
Let me see if Patrick is online or
Yep.
Tom that could speak to that.
Hey, yes, Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, we could likely take that off. That's a typical thing that I have on all the cost estimates that we generate. As far as this project goes, it is under, the construction work is under $50,000. We would be able to do an informal bid for that. We would not envision that the city would be the general contractor on that, however, because we need to actually have somebody, hopefully, who has had some fuel tank work, because the grounded slab and the fuel containment system or spill containment system, and then managing the electrical scope, it is fairly involved. It involves quite a long run of circuits, trenching, core drilling of the building. And we had envisioned that we would just informally bid this and then to a stable of general contractors that bid our work typically, and we'd also send to AGC, Associated General Contractors, so they had on their books. I don't think, I think on something like this, in the sense it is a city project, we typically need a licensed general contractor for any work being performed on projects throughout the state, and that's per state general contracting law for public works project, which city projects fall under that statute.
But since it's under 50,000, since the city can purchase the tanks, the price of the project or the construction is less than 50,000. So you're saying you can go directly to a preferred list of people, get a couple of bids from them to make sure that you're keeping them honest. But you can eliminate the bid bond and the performance bond, since it's really not that important for a project this small, correct?
Yes, Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, that is correct. We can pull out the $1,848 and the $739, which would reduce the total amount. We also had Musgrove Engineering come out and look at the job, and we actually did a site survey for about an hour's time to figure out the best way to run the electrical circuits, the best siting of the tanks, and so that we could have an accurate engineer's cost estimate. I ran some numbers through RS Means, and so did Kurt Lechtenberg at Musgrove Engineering. We ended up right in the same ballpark. The reason we need a mechanical and electrical engineer is just there's enough complexity of this. We wouldn't be able to do it just with a performance spec or just a list of scope of work. And we do need an engineered structural slab, and we do actually have to have the grounding in that slab, the mat and the grounding method has to be spelled out pretty well.
So you've got Musgrove listed as a structural engineer. They're not a structural engineering company. So is
No,
that
they're subbing out the structural.
okay?
They brought one of the structurals that they work with typically on this.
Okay. So the electrical includes all of Musgrove's costs, but they're covering the cost of the structural as well.
I broke out both costs as two separate line items so you can see the structural engineering under the associated project costs that you can see up on the screen. The structural engineering is broken out, and so is the electrical engineering. And that is a not to time and materials not to exceed amount. So if we don't get up to that amount, we won't spend that amount.
Okay.
But we wanted to make sure we had sufficient fees for the cost estimate going forward, so we didn't have to come back to the well after we got this project approved.
Okay. So if we can eliminate 2,500 for the bonds that aren't necessary, are we looking at giving you approval for a project as far as a construction project of approximately $40,500, 41, something to that effect?
Right, for the construction costs, the overall project costs that you'd be approving would be, somewhere in the realm of 171, 122 or something. But
Now,
we'd have to do the math really quick on that.
The last question that I have then is, do we have to pay sales tax for the cost of the tanks?
No, as being a city, we should be able to get those without paying sales tax as we do for most of our purchases.
And I apologize, one more question. Where would these tanks be located then?
The Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, they would be on the northeast corner of the Fleet building, right against the property line that runs along, it's not Railroad, it's the one perpendicular to Railroad. Basically, it'd just be right there on the easterly property line, approximately 40 foot out from the northeast corner of the Fleet building.
So it'd be a secure location then.
It'd be a secure location. We are going to be putting a site lighting pole out there because there's no building lighting or site lighting. It's a dark corner. There are not any street lights either on the other side of the property line, which we can rely on. And the other thing we're adding is a IP addressable low voltage security camera that could be wired into our system, so we don't have any problems with people, hopping the fence and molesting the tanks or the pumps.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for the questions. Before we go to any further questions, I'd like to comment that Jacob Bauer joined during Doug Racine's presentation. So for Deborah Rosen and the clerk, as clerk, could you note that Jacob Bauer is present? And he's gotten to hear most of this discussion. And then I also wanted to mention that Doug Adams, with the oversight of Fleet, is also on, and he did a lot of the research for this particular project and has led that initiative in researching the generators and the needs. And so he would be available to answer any questions if anyone has a question for Doug Adams.
Okay, Mayor, this is Darrell, and probably be best for Doug Adams, and he has answered some of these questions, but just to make them public. Doug, approximately how many 20 commercial, I've heard there's about close to 20 commercial fueling stations in the city of Nampa. Do you know the approximate number?
Yes, Mayor and Councilor, that's generally correct. Between 20 and 25 I could find the exact number if you need, but
Okay.
that's generally correct.
Okay, and then I know you mentioned in questioning previously that about 10 years ago, United Oil did partner with us for fuel at that point in time. I'm not sure what the emergency event was, but you did mention that that has happened there in the past.
They're correct. There was a power outage about 10 years ago, and United Oil did provide bulk fueling at the First Street South site for approximately 4 hours, I believe, was how long the duration of that outage was.
And then you've also mentioned that you've reached out to other fuel suppliers, have not received a response from them, and they are not required, of course. I don't think there's any, where they have to partner with us, but there is the potential possibility of some MOUs with fuel suppliers. Is that still true?
Correct. And I was successful in updating the MOU with United Oil. I have reached out to several other vendors like you're correct, I have not gotten a response from them. We're continuing to work on that to achieve updated MOUs from them as well, if possible.
Okay. And so just a statement then on my part, I appreciate all your work and all this and Doug Racine for partnering on this. And my philosophy normally is preventive rather than reactionary. So I certainly hope for the city of Nampa I don't have egg on my face, but I feel like we need to reach out further, give us a little more time. And I just don't think it has a good look as far as with our finances, the way they're looking at this is something we need to have this expenditure at this point in time. I will be at this point in time, I wish I didn't have to say this, but I will be voting no on this action.
So I would like to ask Doug Adams. Doug, so, and Darrell and I've had this conversation, and I respect Darrell's opinion on it. And it is a difficult timing because of the financial side. As you know, and we've had this discussion before, the reason I brought this forward is the concern that I have that our fuel line comes from Salt Lake City. And if we were to have an earthquake that actually disrupt that fuel line, we would be competing against a lot of people. Like if we had a major power outage or a disruptor for that fuel, how long can we operate the city on the fuel that we currently have? How long can we make sure that we have water and run the sewer plant on our current fuel capacity?
Mayor, if there's a total power outage and there is no fuel available, we could run the city for 48 minutes.
Okay. I was thinking it was a little longer than that. I was thinking we were more like 24 hours that we had enough fuel in our current capacity with the current tanks.
Well, we have the current capacity on hand, but we would not be able to actionably fill the generators in that amount of time. With this plan, we would be allocating the second fuel trailer to be converted to diesel as well. And with the second fuel trailer, with bulk tanks on hand, we would be able to deploy teams to stay ahead of the consumption rate if there was a total power outage. But currently, as we stand, with one 900-gallon trailer with one truck, we would have to choose which 2 or 3 generators to fill. And at a maximum consumption rate, there just isn't that much time on hand.
So we would not be able to keep water to our citizens or our sewer lift stations functioning for sewer for even a matter of hours.
Correct. If the tanks currently at the generators were to go dry, that is correct. If we have no fuel option, the run time for each specific generator is very unique to that generator. The most critical generators without a fuel supply can run for, like I said, about 48 minutes.
Okay. All righty. So, what I realize when we're looking at emergencies for me, while I recognize our dollars are precious and few and we need to be good stewards, for me as mayor, I feel like we have a responsibility to ensure that we can provide water and sewer to our citizens. and that we have the storage capacity with fuel. This storage capacity would only last us how long, Doug?
Again, it's really, I hate to be vague on it, but I'm talking in worst case scenarios, just so we're totally clear. This is a worst case scenario. With the capacity we're talking about now, with converting the second trailer, with the 5,000 gallon diesel tank, we could run approximately 3 days if we have the plan launched as we intend. Again, that's worst case scenario. On a minor outage, or where fuel is available to, say, the north part of the city or the south part, it's going to be different. But again, I like to speak in worst case scenarios because that's really what we're planning for.
Right.
But a worst case scenario with both trailers converted and the tanks as planned, we could run approximately 3 days.
So with that, the MOU that we need to have in place, even no matter what. We have to have an MOU. And for
Correct.
additional fuel, what this does is it provides us with time to, it gives us just a little bit of time is what it does, which is where I feel like it's important that we have provided enough time to where we can go ahead and be arranging for the fueling and everything that we need to do to keep things going. And it would also, with a 5,000 gallon tank for non-diesel fuel, it would allow our police officers to be able to fuel their cars without standing in line somewhere or, having to compete. They do have a good relationship. We have an account with United and we use them a lot. And we really appreciate that relationship, and it's great. But it just adds that capacity, and for the trucks that are pulling the trailers to get those fuel tanks around to the various generators. So are there questions? And I'm sorry that I don't mean to be driving this. I'd like to open it up for council members to ask their questions. Are there further questions for Doug, Patrick, or Doug Adams?
Mayor, go ahead.
Well, I was going to go ahead and make a motion, but if you still have questions, that's fine.
Yes, I do, sir. Thank you. I guess I will ask these to Doug, and it kind of prefaces to get to some comments and some questions. So reading through the material and also remembering prior discussions we've had regarding these emergency tanks, I understand that the life of the gas cycle, as stated in our packet, is about a year. So it has to be used and renewed. And so I'm looking at one that our different departments have come up with the funding for the initial part of the project. And over a year's time, if we're cycling through the gas, that there's going to be an ongoing cost to fill. So what does that look like? So that's the first part of my question. What does that look like? Is each department billed as they use it, and then it continues to come out of their funding? And does their funding eventually run out?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. That's exactly correct. There would be an initial upfront charge to fill the tanks, but then as the fuel is cycled, we would just generate a regular work order and bill the department for the fuel used, and then that fuel funding would be used to refill the tank.
Thank you. So as that fuel is cycled through, then our departments no longer are going to the existing fueling stations. And to me, unless my thinking is totally wrong, it becomes, instead of an emergency tank, it becomes a revolving gas station.
Well, to some degree, it would be. We're required to cycle that fuel out before it goes bad. So it wouldn't be the intent to use it as an operational fueling site, but more of as a maintenance process. We would plan to rotate that fuel out. If that makes more sense. We wouldn't necessarily have it as a hey, these guys need gas today, let's fill them up. That's not really how it would work. We would monitor the chemical composition of the fuel, and when we determine it needs to be rotated, we would identify high use vehicles, fill those vehicles to flush it out as quickly as possible.
So then I guess it takes me back to a couple things. Is there a cost savings taking those things to account? And what is that cost comparison? And then the other part that really goes with that is, earlier it was stated in the presentation that there were funds identified from other departments collectively to enable the purchase of these. So when you take in consideration the savings that were found, have they been taken from projects that would have been critical for those departments to fund?
Councilwoman, this is Doug Racine.
Yes, sir.
The funds being projected here are not coming from anything critical. In the case of the general government, they are savings we have already generated in current year capital by reducing the cost of some projects that we are currently in the progress of. And the reduction came in the force of in the form of finding savings, not in reducing the result of the capital investment or the efficacy or the actual need. For water, wastewater, and streets, it would be similar to having a water main break and reallocating current year funds from one project to the other to supply this, meaning another project downstream got pushed out to next year, and that's fairly common in our processes. As when we budget for the various water and wastewater projects, we always have projects that we cannot complete in the current year, and those get pushed forward. That's what comes forward in the amendment. Nothing critical has been excluded in order to provide this funding.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the explanation. This is kind of difficult for me because I, like Councilman Bauer, I believe in being proactive and preventative where we can, but that's a really tough decision, especially when you consider our finances and the finances of our citizens at this point. But yet, how do we be responsible and prepare for the future as City Council? So I'll continue to listen and learn from what my fellow council members have to ask and making their comments.
Are there any other questions from council?
Mayor, this is Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Hi. Doug Adams, if I remember correctly, you had in the previous presentation, you'd given us the two different proposals. Obviously, the one we're seeing tonight was not your preferred. But this one, if I remember, you'd done sort of a cost analysis on when they might pay themselves back. Can you remind me? I know this one didn't have the same cost analysis for as far as return on investment, but can you remind me what that looked like? Because I think right now we're seeing clearly that we may not think we're going to see unprecedented events, but we've lived a couple in real time right now in an earthquake a number of weeks ago. So can you refresh me on that?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilor Mucci, the emergency tanks, there is no ROI. That's just a dead cost, but it's just an emergency contingent. On the city-owned fuel site, we would make that would become a primary fueling location for all city vehicles, and with a fueling site like that, we can leverage spot market pricing and spot pricing from the rack. And I can buy bulk fuel for roughly 25 to 30 cents a gallon cheaper than we pay now. And with the consumption we have annually from the city, it would have an ROI of between 15 and 20 years. It would pay for itself in that amount of time.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean. The only other thing that where we could currently have an ROI is that because the price of fuel is really low right now, if we were to fueling the tanks today, if we had to fuel these tanks, fill the fuel tanks at a later date, the cost of that fuel is probably going to be considerably more than where it is today. So it is a good time to be fueling because we've got the lowest fuel prices that we've had in a very long time.
Very correct.
So, yeah. Are there any other questions?
Doug, I had one question. Can you remind me again the worst case scenario? I remember it was a few things happening at once.
Mayor and Councilor Bauer, the worst case scenario is the pipeline is severed from Salt Lake and we have a valley-wide power outage. That's worst case scenario. which means we'd have to allocate any fuel reserves to running the generators. And earlier when I stated 48-minute timeline, that is when generators begin certain generators begin to shed. Not all generators, that's when they start to fail with lack of fuel. But that is a perfect storm, so to speak. We can debate many hours on if that would ever happen or how we would address that. But I feel it's important to at least plan for that. If we do not lose electrical power, we would never need to rely on the fuel, because we'd have the fuel available to us. If we lose the pipeline and we can't get fuel, that's where the real issue is.
Thank you.
Okay. I think Randy, you possibly had a motion or a comment.
No, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I think sometimes in life you're giving opportunities to have a warning. I think we've been given several. If a week from now or a week after we could have had these in place, we were to have a major event, we would be looking at a catastrophic situation for our community, whereas we might have been able to prevent that. And I think this is a value added to the city if we do this. If we can save as much money as possible by being our own contractor, at least in the purchase of the tanks themselves, eliminate the bonds, as I've mentioned, I can support this with the funding method that Doug had mentioned. So I'll make a motion to allow the city to proceed with the purchase and development of this project with the elimination of the bonds as stated.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call.
Brunner,
No.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
I think you're on mute.
No.
Mucci,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Okay, I believe what I'm hearing is that motion passes in that we have a 3-2. So I appreciate the work that's been put into it, and thank you for all the comments. I totally understand the concerns on the finances, but I do feel like it's wise. If we could not deliver water or sewer to our city, it would be very, very awkward. So thank you. Okay, so we are ready to move on to action item 2.2, and this is to award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Concerco Inc. for the Phase 3 deck coating at the Hugh Nichols Public Safety Building. And this was approved in our 2020 budget. It does not say it on the agenda, but I know that we did approve this in our budget for the 2020 budget. Do you have any questions for Brian Foster?
Mayor Clay,
Yes.
the only question I have is that it appears that there was only one. Was there only one bid or were there more than one bid?
Mayor and council, this is Patrick Sullivan. There was only one bid. We had this was a large enough project. This was a formally bidded project. It was in plan rooms. We did call several people who had bid in the prior year, and the only bid that we got was from Concerco Inc. They were also the contractor that performed the work, the last phase as well. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions you may have.
So when was this bid received? April 10th?
Correct, April 10th.
Okay. Do you feel, Patrick, that in light of the downturn in the economy, the potential loss of projects we've seen in the construction side, that projects that were anticipated are being postponed or eliminated altogether? Do you feel that if we were to rebid this project, we might be able to get more consideration, more contractors that would have an interest?
Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, this project bid significantly under budget. Our original expenditure was approved in the 2020 budget for $356,000, and the cost of the contract was $199,000. If we add in design, we're about $90,000, or about right around $90,000 under budget on this project, and we're going to use that savings. Some of it would go to the fuel center or the fuel tank project. Some of it will go to help the fleet roof project, which we are designing and bidding and going out to bid here in the next 60 days. And then we had a shortfall on the Fire Station 5 project. Some of that money will go to that as well. The remaining money would just go back into general fund for other capital projects, either this year or into the FY21 budget.
Okay, and their bid includes their bonds and insurance. That's not in addition. Is there a contingency built into their number or not?
Yes, there is a contingency, and we were able to get our contingency back on the last project as well. And the reason we do a contingency built in as a, let's see, let me find the unit prices for contingency. Yeah, we have a, I think we have a 10% contingency in this, in the contract. The reason we do a contingency for these is because there is so much spalling, and once you get into that and you get into media blasting that, those areas can open up larger than what they first appeared. So we need to have the contingency through the project, but I am hopeful that we will be able to even have more cost savings and not expend the entire contract amount.
Thank you.
Mayor, this is Darrell.
Yes.
Patrick, so this is the same company we've used prior?
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman Brunner, that is correct. This is the same contractor who has actually performed and got the low bid the last two budget cycles. This is the third phase of a three-phase project, and this will complete all of the exposed deck at the Hugh Nichols building.
So that's my follow-up question, I guess, and you're going to need to educate me here. What was the reason our budgeting was such a difference than what this bid came in? If we've utilized this company before, I would think we'd have a rough idea of what type of bid they would make. Any idea why there was such a difference? Well,
I think we're always chasing the economy either up and down when we put together cost estimates. As a design professional, I mean, we reach out and we get unit prices from contractors who can tell us what they bid projects like this. We also reach out to Boise Development Corp, who actually does this work also on their parking garages, just to see what projects have bid for as a square foot cost. And then we take those numbers and we just multiply it times the actual cost. Obviously, we don't have any control over how competitive a contractor is. It would be my guess that the contractor was hungry enough, they felt like, lowballing their labor costs so they could actually get the work. And then I don't know the story of the people that did not come to the table and bid. A lot of times by this time of year, a lot of the projects for the temperate months that you have to do this work are already bid out, and contractors typically don't have the bandwidth to do projects like this. So I think the stars just aligned on this one, and we lucked out on it. I think that had Concerco been busy on other projects, I think that their bid amount would have been closer to the estimate.
Okay. Thanks, Patrick. Let's have the stars align on all future projects too, will you? Can you control that? Okay.
That's my hope, but I don't go by the almanac or the stars charts very often, so we'll have to see.
Right. Are there any other questions? And thank you for the questions and answers, Patrick.
Mhm.
Mayor, one last question for Patrick. Are we going to reduce the amount of use of the upper deck of that parking structure during the winter months, like we do on the public parking facility?
Mayor and council, we've worked for the past few years with the police to try and do that. I think one thing that's going to help in the short term is fire admin is moving out, and some of that parking will then be in the lower levels will be relegated back to police. I think that for a time we'll see that less use, but if we end up in the next 10 years filling up that building with police and staff, I think that we're going to be really close to actually maxing out that parking structure.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions? So I would stand for a motion related to this action item, which would be to authorize us to move forward and sign, authorize the bid and sign it.
I'll make the motion to move forward as presented.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call?
Munchy,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Bruner,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Thank you. So as we move on to action item 2.3, I might mention to Doug Racine that you can go ahead and end your screen share of our number 2.1 agenda item, just in case someone needs to do a screen share. Thank you, Doug. Okay, item 2.3 on the agenda is also an action item to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with HCD Incorporated. This is for the exterior siding replacement on the Fire Station 5 siding project.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I can shed some light on this one. This is another one of our approved FY20 capital projects. Some background on this is when the station was built 7 years ago, the decision was made during the building of the station to go really inexpensive on the siding solution, which was a 1-inch thick EIFS style modular siding that is fastened, and then the seams are have a finish coat. Basically, the wind has been peeling these up and allowing water intrusion for probably a couple years, and we have had some expenses in the last few years of just maintenance of refastening these. So the scope of the project is to demo this old foam siding system, put an inch of foam back over the wood studs where the siding occurs, and then go with a hardy style cement board siding. And then also we're replacing all of the EIFS trim that's failing that was applied over the bay doors and over all the window, or a lot of the windows and doors. We were able to, we went out to competitive bid on this with a limited scope, performance spec and some drawings. It came in over budget, about $17,234,000 over budget, for a total cost of $87,234. We are proposing that we pay for that overage with the savings that we incurred on the previous project with the deck coating project. We did have 3 bids on April 23rd that were opened. And again, the parent low bid was received from HCD Inc. They are a contractor that from time to time wins bids on either tenant improvements or maintenance projects for us. And they are a reputable contractor that we have confidence in. So I'll stand for any other questions.
I would like to mention that this project was originally budgeted at around $85,000. during the last budget cycle, we reduced the funding down to the 70. So when the bid came in over budget, it actually came in at what it was originally budgeted at. They had budgeted accurately. It just was that we didn't fund it in our capital fund at the level of what it was originally proposed at. So you did a good job of catching that one. You nailed that one right at where the bid came in. So
Thank you, Mary, for that explanation.
are there any questions?
Mayor
for
Plank?
Patrick? Yes.
Patrick, why are we putting the foam back as far as under the siding?
Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, because otherwise we have a depth of reveal problem because we're taking off 1.25 inch material that's an integral foam with a stucco coating.
Right.
And if we take that off and just put a vapor barrier back with a siding material, now we have to have some type of a detail on the top, bottom, and the sidebar trim. If we put in the 1-inch siding, we're able to actually utilize most of the hard trim pieces that are framing these siding areas.
So it's just a backer material. It's not a solid substrate that you're attaching your siding to, like a plywood or an OSB. My experience, and you've probably had it as well, with the EFA systems, anytime you go with a stucco product or even siding products over foam, over time, the attachments, whether they're screws are better than nails, but it just backs them right back out because of the thermal expansion contraction. So I'm wondering why you're not going over a solid substrate and going back with the insulation unless there was an R value required.
Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, we did it solely for the cost savings of going to a foam product over a dimensional wood product that would be that thick. The other thing is it's wood studs. There's an existing wood OSB panel over the wood studs. We would then screw this 1-inch foam over the OSB panel, and then we would put a new vapor barrier on outboard of the foam, and then we would attach to the studs the lap siding.
So not to get in the weeds, but is it a polystyrene or is it polyiso cyanurate?
Hold on. I've got the drawing.
Sorry, I didn't.
No worries.
Weeds. I'm not a firm believer in the insulation, especially depending on where your drainage plane falls, because obviously moisture can be trapped behind it. In other parts of the United States, they won't even insure this product or
Right.
insulation.
So Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, I'm looking at the detail now. We have existing sheathing, and then we're going with a weather barrier, then 1-inch rigid insulation. I do not have the bid spec with me. I only have the drawings with me. And then we're going over that with a fiber cement siding with an 8-inch reveal. And I think this is going to be looking at the details and what we've come up with, I think that this is going to adequately drain, and I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Okay, I just don't want to come back in 8 years or hear that we have to replace siding again. Of course, that'll be somebody else's problem, not mine, but just want to make sure that we're dotting the I's and crossing the T's here.
Yeah, right.
Patrick, I have a question for you. Not knowing whatever brand this the cement fiberboard is that we're using, will that void a warranty if it is going over the insulation board as Randy is discussing? Have you confirmed that it will not void any warranties?
Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, no, will not void any warranties. We are also using manufacturer specs, and our basis of design as a Hardy plank or a Hardy brand 8-inch reveal lap siding.
Okay, I would just want to make sure that that application is, as Councilman Haverfield was saying, that we have a confirmation that there's no way that we would void a warranty with the products we're using and the way that we're applying it, because I think there were some really good points there. So just that would just be to double check that.
I can double check that, but I was active when we looked at the drawings prior to going out to bid, and then also we actually our architects that put together the limited set and the technical spec. I believe we have crossed all those T's and dotted all those I's, but I will get back to you tomorrow and with an email and just confirm that. But I'm positive. I just don't have the bid spec here, but we did go through the scope and we did discuss other means and methods to get that out. And it made more sense to actually use that 1-inch rigid as a spacer than to try and suck the siding back in and figure out the transitions.
Are there any other questions for Patrick? Okay, stand for a motion. And it's quiet.
Mayor Kling, I know that this is.
Mayor, I was going to let the architect, I think we're all going to be architects if we hang around Councilman Haverfield long enough with these terminologies, but I'll make the motion to proceed as stated.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Roll call.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes,
Bauer,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Okay, so item 2.4 on the agenda is an action item to request the council award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract for the Zone F annual pipeline replacement. This is the FY20 project that we've talked about recently, and it's approved in the FY20 budget.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
yes,
Bauer,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Brunner.
Okay, item 2.5 on the agenda is an action item, and this is to award the bid and authorize the mayor to sign the contract. And this is upon receipt of the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality bid acceptance letter for construction of the Nampa wastewater treatment plant phase 2 upgrades, which is Project E. This is the administration and laboratory building renovation with Petra, who is the low bidder on this. It was approved in the FY20 budget with the remaining budget requests coming in FY21. Nate, would you like to speak to this?
Be my pleasure, Mayor.
Okay.
Good evening, council members. As Mayor Kling noted, this is the second of 4 of the phase 2 projects that have been before you for award. The first being the Group D Primary Digester 5 that's currently under construction. The third project is the big one, as I like to call it. It's the Progressive Design Build. That project is in the procurement stage. The city did receive proposals from our 3 finalists in that project, and we're working through the review of those, and hopefully we'll be back before City Council in July with the contract to start work on that project. The last project is the Group G. It's a rehab project for the wastewater plant headworks and clarifier. That's looking at getting into design in 2023 and wrapping up by 2026. Now, for tonight's project, this is the laboratory and administration renovation project, where it started out as we were just going to go build a brand new lab on the treatment plant site. And the treatment plant does have an existing admin building that has a large area that's been used as a maintenance shop, but staff were able to identify ways to operate in other shops and equipment storage sheds. Well, it's not fair to call it a shed. It's a large garage that could facilitate maintenance. So by shifting things around and managing the money the best we can, staff came up with a way to renovate the 1970s admin building and build a brand new laboratory within the shop space of that same building. So we're going to be looking at a project that's got a budget of $3.4 million. With the bids that we received, we're estimated at the project to come in around $740,000 under budget. These bids were opened back at the end of April, and we received 7 bids. 6 of those bids were very competitive, ranged from $1,963,000 up to $2,168,000. We did have one outlier that came in around $3,425,000. So that's the bidders. The engineer estimate was $2,160,000. The low bidder was Petra. Their bid came in at $1,963,577, and well under the budget. Now this project is funded through the city's loan with IDEQ, the $165 million loan. Should this project be awarded tonight, that would allocate just under $17 million of the loan. So there's another $148 million out there to complete the remaining projects on the loan. The city also has cash collected through revenues of around $24 million that aligns with the original project budget of phase 2, which is $189 million, which we're striving to come in well under that, and we're looking at in good shape. So as Mayor noticed in her intro, if council decides to approve tonight, this decision will go back to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality for their final approval, at which time they will notice the city authority to sign the contract. May seem a little out of order, but the way the state wants to do it, they have asked that the city authorize for the mayor to sign and then allow DEQ to come back and put their final stamp on it before we issue contracts. So the request tonight is for city council to award bid and authorize mayor to sign contract upon receipt of Idaho Department of Environmental Quality bid acceptance letter for the construction of Nampa's wastewater treatment plant phase 2 upgrades project group E, administration and laboratory building renovation with Petra Inc. in the amount of $1,963,577.
Mayor, I'll make the motion to accept it as Nate Runyon just read.
Second.
Mayor Kling,
Yes.
can I get at least a description of why 2.5 and 2.6 appear to have the same information in it? I have a question about the construction administration services specifically. Is that outlined in 2.6?
Mayor and councilman, construction administration services. Are you?
I'm looking
a
at the
little
budget.
clarification.
I'm looking at
are you
the
referring to
budget.
the architect services?
Yes, sir. Along with
That-
the owner
that-
advisor services.
Okay. Councilman, so 2.6 are the construction administration services.
No,
Okay.
it's
The
architects.
owner, which is referred to and listed as architect services during construction. The owner's advisor services, those were approved when we awarded the Group D project. That's performed by Brown and Caldwell under their owner advisors contract.
Can you tell me why you have architects performing construction administration services for the building they designed, and then also Brown and Caldwell as another filter for a static building? This isn't part of the design build project. This is a static building design that was bid. Petra won the award. I can go along with 2.5 and in allowing the bid, but I have a real problem with the fact that we have a duplication of services, almost $300,000 worth of representation that's not necessary. One or the other is what I'm saying. Why do we still have Brown and Caldwell involved in a design of a building that was performed by CTA architects? We're being asked to allow them to continue on with construction administration services. Why do we need Brown and Caldwell to do the same thing?
So Nate, I'd like to, Randy, I asked a similar question to Tom Points recently. And Nate, my understanding was we were not bringing Brown and Caldwell that piece forward tonight because of the question that I had discussed. So it was not my understanding that that had previously been authorized. My understanding was we were not bringing that forward for approval because I had the same question Randy did. So
that, yes, and that discussion was had. I can maybe add some clarification and some definition to what we're looking at here. So if I may.
Yes.
Mayor and Councilman, the architect's services during construction, those are confined to the specialty architectural submittals, on-site inspections that you yourself are likely used to performing, minus what you consider construction administration. Because of the complexity of the SRF loan, Brown and Caldwell is managing, the Davis-Bacon wages, all of the compliance with the ARRA, all of the federal requirements, wage rates, et cetera. They also are managing all of the general submittals, review of any change orders, RFIs, and we'll be bringing the architect in for consultation if it's a complex issue. So when Public Works evaluated this bid as a whole, and we look at the cost of construction, and we look at the architect services plus the owner's advisor services, we're at about 15%. And that did seem a little high. So we went and consulted our building department. Building department said, yeah, that's a little high. We usually see it around 13%. Though they did say that with the fact that this building is a renovation and not a new construction, 15% is not unreasonable. And then when we got into the discussion about the SRF loan, the federal and state requirements, and all the documentation that goes along with that, building felt comfortable with where our budget is at and where our allocated dollars are for those construction administration services, which is made up of the owner's advisors contract for $188,000 and this Cushing Terrell's architect services during construction for the $111,000.
I'm sorry, I'm still not convinced. I just don't understand why there is $300,000 allocated for construction administration services. You had design fees of almost $250,000. So this exceeds the design fees for the building itself. Am I missing something here? I'm just looking at the numbers you provided.
Your Councilman, the design was done extremely efficiently. There was also some preliminary work done. There was an additional $100,000 $150,000 of preliminary engineering work that you don't see on the design fees. So Cushing Terrell did an excellent job of pulling these plans together in less than 4 months and getting it out and getting us a very competitive bid. But the complexity of the SRF funds, unfortunately, the city doesn't have the capacity to do that. And building department, they manage these projects, and Patrick and I went back and forth quite a while on how do we get the building department to run this for us, and let's cut those fees. But they don't have the manpower to do it. So I just don't know
I'm
how
sorry.
we do it.
I'm sorry, Nate. I mean, you're just still, you're going down the same trail. The architect services, I don't have a problem with at 111. I have a problem with 188 on top of that. That seems to be redundant. That's my perception of it. I mean, I've handled projects as the architect involved with the construction administration, handling everything during that phase. Now, if just the SRF loan documentation is $188,000, okay, that's news to me. But as far as doing the change orders, doing the payment applications, doing the walkthroughs, the progress meetings, that's the architect services during construction. That's not additional advisor services that are not needed for the architect to perform that. So I guess I have a problem with the $188,000 to Brown and Caldwell for management of an SRF loan.
Mayor, Councilman, we can sure go back and take another look at the contract that we've already signed for $188,000. But there is one thing I think that I need to be clear on. The architect is reviewing submittals. Brown and Caldwell is doing construction management and DEQ work. They aren't doing the same thing.
Well,
This is
Petra's your construction manager. Petra is who you're hiring to be the construction manager, not Brown and Caldwell.
So-
Yeah.
Could I make a comment? And that is that, Nate, something Tom and I talked about was that this is not a digester. This is not a complex wastewater plant. This is the building, right? This is an architectural, it's a building remodel. And so I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe I missed an email or something, but my understanding was that we didn't put Brown and Caldwell on the agenda for approval because we needed to go back and research it because I had the same questions that Councilman Haverfield. So I am going to be surprised that there's something signed because I thought it had not come forward and we did not put it on this agenda because we needed to research it further because I didn't feel like I felt like it was excessive. It's identical to what Randy's saying. So I'm almost suggesting, I think we may need to pause on all of it, or we move forward with Petra and then we pause on 2.6 until we get some clarification. Because I think we need to clarify where we are with Brown and Caldwell and if we've entered into an agreement because there's a definite lack of clarity on that.
I'd appreciate that, Mayor. I have a hard time supporting this at the cost associated to it, even though I support the project 100%. I just think that that's $100,000 that's not necessary on somebody's part.
So could I recommend that Nate, would there be a problem if we move forward with action item 2.5, which is awarding the bid to Petra, and then postponing item 2.6 until we have further clarity on the role of Brown and Caldwell and the architectural services?
Well, I mean, the only problem I see is we don't have anybody to manage the project, so I think maybe we just table it all.
Well, I don't know that we want to lose our bid, and we will only be coming back in another 2 weeks. We just need the clarity before we vote on it. I don't know that I would risk losing Petra as your contractor and mess up that bid, the acceptance of their bid. Would have to hold on the other two. Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, I just want to interject. Nate and I talked about this at length. I mean, just as an analog, I've worked for several for Albertsons and for BSU as the owner's architect. And in this case, what Brown and Caldwell is doing is they're acting as the owner's project manager, because there isn't anybody on Nate's team or on Tom Point's team that is an actual project manager for this type of work. And that's why Brown Caldwell is hired as a third-party owner's rep or owner's project manager, which basically we've got the contractor, the design team, or the construction manager, the design team, and then we need somebody at the owner's office to process change orders and to process pay apps and do the weekly reports for the Davis-Bacon wage or the monthly pay app reports. And those aren't short reports, they're long reports. So I mean, if you do the math on it's our project manager probably spent for the 6 months that we worked on the Nampa Development Services building, she probably spent 20 hours a week as the owner's project manager dealing with construction issues, change orders, RFIs, and be able to act on the owner's behalf to say, yes, we want to do this, no, we don't want to do this, and reconciling that with Nate's budget. If Nate actually had a project manager in-house, or if we had the bandwidth right now where we could do it, we could do something like that, but we just don't have the bandwidth when we're trying to clear out all of our projects right now. So I think that having an owner's project manager is essential for this type of complexity of a project that isn't only an office project, but it also has some complexity in the HVAC system due to the labs that have to be in there. It's an old building. When they uncover things, there's going to be just a ton of RFIs. We've got old electrical systems, we're replacing mechanical systems, we have fume hoods. And so I think what you're going to arrive at, even if you kick it down the road 2 weeks, is that you're still going to need an owner's project manager. And since we don't have one on staff that can actually do it right now, it makes sense to use Brown Caldwell, who performs that role for the larger wastewater project, where this is just one of the minor phases of it. And I just wanted to give some clarity on just what the actual relationships are based on my discussion with Nate the other day.
Mayor, Patrick, I appreciate what you're saying. It all sounds good. I'm poking holes in my mind. When you're talking about delegation of responsibilities, I see Petra performing some of the stuff that you're talking about. I see the architect performing the balance of it. I just don't understand the role of Brown and Caldwell. So I would appreciate having a little better definition on that before I can support the motion.
Okay, and so we haven't. Yes.
Hi, Mayor. So I'm agreeing with you that we should form
And Tom,
2.5.
Tom, could you repeat that? You were breaking up.
I do agree with you. We should look at a work in the construction portion, which is because we've got that one have to get it. And I think Mayor it's lost again.
So Tom,
again, Mayor.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up quite a bit, so I'm having a hard time understanding you. It might be good for you to call in on your phone. Is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It'll take just a second. Randy, in your pause, were you suggesting, while we're waiting for Tom to call in, not supporting the motion to award the bid to Petra? Because
No.
we're actually on 2.5 right now.
I'm okay with the bid to Petra, but as Nate mentioned, you need to have someone to administer the contractual relationship between the city and with Petra, and that's what the architect would be doing.
Yeah.
Again, or Ron Caldwell would be doing, one or the other, not both.
Yeah. You know, and
Mayor, you can hear me better now, Mayor.
yes, I can. So you'll have to speak up a little bit, but yes.
So I was agreeing with you that we should continue with awarding the bid to Petra, because we have 7 bids, and that's a really good bid. We don't want to lose this opportunity, and they allow us, Nate and I, to come back and look at and explain some of what's already in Brown and Caldwell's contract, and just come up with some options for you. And so that would be tabling item 2.6.
Okay. So with that, we have a motion on the table, I believe. And Debbie, can you remind me after discussion? I think, did we have a motion already?
Yes.
And a second, and we were in discussion.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, I'd like to move forward with item 2.5 with and the motion was to approve awarding the bid to Petra. And if there's no other discussion on that one topic, we will go ahead and move forward. Let me ask a question, though. I'm going to pause real quickly. Who made the motion to award the bid?
Darrell.
Darrell, I second.
Okay, so Darrell, are you okay with, after this discussion, with proceeding with your motion as stated to award the bid?
Yes, yes, and I appreciate this discussion, and thank you, Councilman Haverfield, and for a little more clarification here in the next few days. Thanks.
Okay,
On 2.6, so we're just handling this for 2.5, not for 2.6.
that is correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we are voting on item 2.5, and this is to award the bid to Petra in the amount of $1,963,577. So is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Okay, so item 2.6 on the agenda, we are going to postpone any action on that item until the next council meeting, and at which time we will do the research that we have discussed tonight regarding the owner's representative and architectural services, and we will come back with more information. And in the meantime, feel free to have, Councilman Haverfield, feel free to have the discussion. And Tom, we've had this discussion internally, and I realized we did not come back and really clarify this item because there was a reason why Brown and Caldwell was not on the agenda, and because of this very discussion. So we will come back and this will be moved to the next council meeting and will be addressed as unfinished business. Okay. With that, then, we're going to move to 2.7 on the agenda. And items 2.7 and 2.8 and 2.9 all have to do with CDBG funding. And I believe Beth Einick and Matt Jamison will be presenting. And, you know, I'll pause real quickly and say, Nate and Tom, thank you for listening to the discussion, and thank you for your work on this last action item, and we will be back. So thank you very much. Okay, 2.7 action item. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Okay,
Mayor King. Good evening, Council. Item 2.7 on the agenda is for a CDBG-related activity. Back in last year's CDBG allocation, we gave Parks Department $32,064.24. Unfortunately, last year we didn't have quite enough money to give everybody what they wanted. This was a compromise because I believe the council at the time thought $108,000 was a little high for the shelter. So we awarded them $32,64.24 with the understanding that they would maybe go back out and try to find a solution for that shelter that would get closer to that budget that was allocated. I believe Cody and his staff have been working in the off time to try to come up with some solutions that would work. I think they've come up with something right now that's going to be around $46,000 instead of the $108,000, but it would require an infusion of a little bit more grant funding from prior program years to cover the difference at this point. So between the time we originally allocated and now, we've closed out some of the programs from last year and freed up some cash flow that we can now put into this program. Right now, I've identified some 2018 program year funds in the amount of $14,000 that we could add to their project, bringing the total to $46,064.24, which would cover the additional amount they needed for their the estimates they received. What this would do is currently replace the shelter structure itself. I believe work with some wiring to be moved for electrical outlets, things that are there now, to sort of be relocated to the new shelter. And then it is leaving the existing slab concrete in place. And that is my understanding of where their current, I guess, proposals that they've received from contractors. They get some little closer to what was originally allocated, but it fell a little short. So.
Mayor, if I may, Matt, if I may, before we move on to the other two here, Cody's on the line, on the line, I believe. I'm just interested in, it has to be more than just a concrete slab that we're not removing. Cody, if you can explain the difference between about a $60,000 difference. I mean, I love the price now, but what is the difference in the structure from what we were looking at over a year ago?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Bruner, the structure quote, the lower price structure quote that we received was from HCD Industries, and they are more of a kind of a pole barn construction facility rather than a recreational shelter supplier, a typical recreation shelter supplier. They were able to make it more custom to fit the shape of the existing concrete pad and with lower cost materials than the commercial grade shelter suppliers that we received the initial quotes from.
Okay, and then Mayor, a follow-up. So have we used this purveyor before?
Yeah, Mayor, Councilman Bruner, the Parks Department has used HCD one previous time with the construction of a pole barn for to serve as a barn storage building at the Idaho Center.
So final question, you feel like this is going to suffice? Or are you disappointed in us going with it with a lower, not quite the structure that you were originally proposing?
No, Mayor, Councilman Bruner, we're happy with anything new. The existing one is wooden and showing signs of rot and decomposing the wooden structure. This new one would be powder coated steel and outlive me. I think the biggest thing that would look out of place is the cracked existing pad will still be there, although functional, just not as aesthetically pleasing as a new one would be.
Well, I thank you for $60,000. I think we'll put up with less aesthetics. So thank you, Cody.
Is that a motion?
Darrell, would you like to make a motion?
Mr. I make the motion that we accept the whatever it was, 14,000 something extra, and to go ahead and move with this project as stated.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mucci,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Okay, so item 2.8 is to approve the proposed allocation for CDBG COVID funding. It's -CV, but it's for the COVID funding, and to authorize the staff to proceed with an action plan amendment and the solicitation of nonprofit partners to implement the proposed allocation.
Mayor.
I'll make the motion, Mayor, on this.
Councilman Bruner, Mayor,
Yes.
I need to abstain as I'm on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club, and they may benefit from this, so I'll be abstaining.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Jean. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, we do have a correction from the original staff memo.
Okay.
The original staff memo had a $60,000 requested for administration and planning. We wanted to decrease that by $40,000 and put that $40,000 into the rental and utility assistance program. So that would result in $141,700 for the rental and utility assistance, and then just $20,000 for administration and planning efforts.
which is absolutely the right direction to be going. So it's putting
Right.
more funds. So, Darrell, did you make the motion?
Yeah, I did. And let me just, if I may ask, Mayor, the discussion, that I love to hear less administration costs. But how did you make where's that 40,000 worth of work or wherever? Who's putting that in?
Would you like
The work isn't less, I take it.
No, I'd like to answer that because it's actually coming from our side. We were looking for funding for Nampa Ready to manage the Nampa Ready program that Kristen is currently doing. We're going to fund that using an alternative option. And so Kristen is going to stay working on the emergency side, and the Nampa Ready function will fall in with some of that side. So we just decided that we would fund it in a different way and figure it out, and so that we could put more dollars towards the utility and the rental assistance.
Yeah.
It's with the thought we need to get it out of administration and figure out how we can do it and get more dollars out to the people.
Well, thank you, and thank you to Kristen, and thank you for giving more to the citizens that are in need of this. Thank you.
Darrell, did you amend your motion?
No, I did not amend my motion,
Well,
So-
but I will need to.
yes.
So give me the figure. Give me the figures again.
So as presented, with the exception of taking 40,000 from the administration and planning budget and putting it toward the rental and utilities assistance budget.
Okay, so I will amend my motion to as stated.
I'll
with
amend my second.
transfer.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Levi,
Gosh. Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Okay, and our last new business item is an action item, and this is to authorize the staff to proceed with the creation of standard operating procedures and the required documentation in accordance with the initial outline for the creation of a micro enterprise loan program and a micro loan program funded through the CDBG COVID grant funds. Beth?
And Robin is also on. She did the bulk of the work on the memo that's in your packet. So, but it's basically kind of creating that loan program. This is something that businesses who have received any of the CARES Act funding thus far would not be eligible for. So it's really to address those small businesses that have fallen through the cracks, especially the businesses that have less than 5 employees would be prioritized through, I believe it's the micro enterprise program. So there's some really specific rules that HUD requires us to follow. It's a little more arduous than we would like it to be, but we also recognize that there's a huge need, and we hope that many businesses are able to take advantage of the governor's plan that's opening next week with the 300 million, but also recognize that I'm sure there are businesses who will also miss out on that opportunity. So this program would be for only businesses that are not able to take advantage of either the state of Idaho's cash grants or the other programs through the Small Business Administration that have taken place. And I know Robin's here to answer any specific questions on kind of the two programs and why they've been outlined the way they are, but they're outlined essentially really following the HUD requirements that we have to meet.
Mayor Kling, I'll make the motion to accept this as an action item to move forward. I think anything that we can do to help small business, we need to be doing. So I'll
Second.
make- Good.
Okay, I think that was Sandy, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, Beth. Beth, what can you give an example of a business who might benefit from this? And I know they're really small. But what can you kind of give me just an idea?
Sure, like a lifestyles cafe in downtown, where they've got maybe just 1 or 2 employees. It might even just be the sole proprietor that's operating it, that's the employee. So they have to have demonstrated that they've had significant decrease in revenue. I guess Lifestyles is a fantastic example because they've not been open probably long enough. But something of that size, right? Where they have to show us that they have decreased revenues. I think it's 50% is what Robin had outlined here due to COVID-19. So we have to make sure we're kind of checking that box on the funds. But yeah, we're really looking for, it might even be a laundromat operator or any type of business is really eligible, but it's really on those micro sizes. So looking for less than 5 employees.
So most of these then likely will be kind of our locally based owners who are then getting, I love this. Thank you.
Yes. And there is, because it is the HUD dollars, there is a low moderate income requirement. So either the business owner themselves have to qualify or their employees have to qualify. So there is definitely a piece there that's targeted towards low-income individuals.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Okay, that concludes our new business items. We have one unfinished business item, and this is the resolution for extension of our emergency declaration. And I think I would like for Doug Waterman to visit with us about this.
Good evening, Mayor Council. So this is a fourth extension of the state of emergency for the city of Nampa. A couple preliminary points. It's going to be a similar consequence, same consequence as the prior extensions. This was on the agenda for Monday, but of course was continued to today. So took a little more work to make sure it could be extended to this point, which included a mayoral renewal, which occurred today as well. But the other change here is that rather than extending to a specific date, the emergency for the state of Nampa will just continue along concurrently with the state of emergency for the state of Idaho. And when the emergency for the state of Idaho terminates, then there will be 72 hours when the city council could determine that they would like to extend it further. And of course, in the interim, the city council could always request that Nampa state of emergency be terminated earlier as well. Again, the point of the state of emergency existed in the city of Nampa pre-stay home order, pre-stay healthy order. Its main functions are to make sure we can coordinate the state and local and federal level to obtain funding to support people in this time, to shield us liability-wise as we continue to respond to COVID, and the event we have to do a procurement that requires some emergency, that emergency exists. So those are the benefits, and I'm happy to answer any more specific questions. I attempted to beef up the recitals in this particular resolution in lieu of comments that were and questions that were raised last time. So hopefully it's more descriptive and has answered some of the concerns that council had. But anyway, I stand for any questions.
Doug, thank you for your work on this, and I appreciate it. So thank you. Are there any questions? Nope. Okay, I'd stand for a motion to approve this resolution, the continuation.
Motion to approve the continuation of the emergency declaration.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call.
Bruner,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
No.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Mucci.
Yes.
Okay, section 4 on the agenda are just our pending ordinances. As usual, they are just noted, and it's a lot of them only because we just had a really long council meeting. I did 10 public hearings recently, so they're pending documentation. And then at this time, I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session. We have 2 items. The one is a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061J to consider labor union matters that are authorized under section 67-234A, which is 74206A1A and B of Idaho Code. The second item is a motion to adjourn into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74206(1)A to consider hiring a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent wherein respective qualities of individuals are to be evaluated in order to fill a particular vacancy or need. So that would be the motion. If I could have a motion to adjourn into executive session for those two items.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Mucci,
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
So for anyone watching online, just a quick mention that when we adjourn into executive session, due to the nature of being on a virtual meeting, we will not be returning to this meeting. When we are in executive session, we do not vote on anything, discussion purposes only. And then for council, we will move to the other platform for our executive session. I would like to suggest that we take possibly a 5-minute break, and then we would convene in the executive session in just about 5 minutes. So I'll see you there.
Okay.
Thank you.